Surprise!
We're taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us for an incredible higher education marketing and enrollment management conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is
amazing.
Thousands of copies have been sold across the United States and the world. You can pick up your copy today on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you here on another episode of EdUp as we fast approach 700 episodes. I never thought I'd say that I did 700 podcast episodes. In fact, I probably have missed 20 of those. I think in total, maybe 20, 25 I actually have missed, or I couldn't do it. Somebody stepped in for me. But I'm pretty sure I've done over 650 myself, or been on for over 650. My brain is full of information. Where you can get some of the information from 150 of the presidents we interviewed on this podcast is in our new book, Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education, which if you haven't heard me plug it on this podcast, you're probably not listening, because since I do the podcast and I have a book, it's like, why wouldn't I plug my own book? But Commencement is about the future of higher education informed by 150 college and university leaders across the globe. We'll give you incredible insights. I know because I wrote a lot of it, and it was very, very hard to get all of the themes college and university presidents are dealing with today into a book, even though it's already 500 pages. It's like 500 pages, but it is very easy to read. I will say that it is not written in a way that it's hard to read, and there's a lot of social media pull quotes in there. I encourage everybody to check it out. So since then, I've interviewed now 105 more presidents, and it's like right after we wrote that book, AI became a thing, a real thing. If it was the thing before, it was a real thing after. And colleges started really closing in a fast way, and partnerships started to manifest themselves, and mergers and acquisitions started heating up. We're really in an interesting time in higher ed. And I think if you're hearing this podcast, it's probably 2 weeks out from where we record it, but there were 2 more institutions that had their accreditation pulled, and they're regional institutions, but they're closing, and you just wonder, where does it end? One person that's going to help me tell the story today is a person I'd like to bring to the microphone. He's got a Southern accent, which you'll hear as he talks. It's very Southern. It's maybe like a Mississippi, Alabama type accent. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is. He's Elliot Markowitz, or Markowitz, depending on where you're from. Head of Content and Editor-in-Chief at Fierce Education. Elliot, what's going on?
Well, thank you for having me once again, Joe. Always appreciate the opportunity to get in on the thought leadership and pick the brains of these outstanding guests. If you think I have a Southern accent, you really need to get out on the country a little bit more.
It's not. I mean, maybe it's more northern. I guess it's more northern. I like to call him Elliot Markowitz, and then he corrects me and says Markowitz. So you got to get it right if you're going to do it, Elliot. It's always a pleasure to have you back on as we have these conversations with trailblazing leaders throughout education. See where you know what? There's not a day that goes by that I do this podcast where I don't make a mistake, and I leave every mistake in. That's the beauty of the EdUp experience, is that when you make a mistake, it stays in, because we're making mistakes every day as we work with students, and those mistakes that we make are real. And so they stay in the podcast because we're all humans. And I'm going to bring a real live human to be our guest today. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. He's Dr. Farzin Madjidi. He is the Dean for the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at Pepperdine University. Farzin, how are you?
Very well, thank you. And thank you for having me on your show.
It's an honor to have you here, my friend. Pepperdine, what an incredible institution, and one of the most beautiful campuses I've ever seen. I had an opportunity to be at Pepperdine once, and it's one of the campuses, the college campuses, you get on and you start looking around going, whoa, look at that. Tell us a little bit about Pepperdine and what you do.
Pepperdine has 5 schools. I reside at the Graduate School of Education and Psychology. Pepperdine has a Seaver College for our undergraduates, then a School of Law, School of Public Policy, Grazia School of Business and Management. And I think I left one out.
That's
Well,
okay. You just didn't include them. You didn't leave them out. You just
Yes,
didn't include them this time.
that's right. That's right.
Nailed
So
it.
law, policy, business, Seaver College, undergraduate and graduate school of education and psychology. I'm the dean of grad school of education and psychology. At the graduate school, we cater to working adults. So most of our students, about 90% of our students, commute to the campus, unlike our undergraduate experience. We are also headquartered pretty close to the LAX area, so we don't get the beauty of the magnificent beauty of our Malibu campus. But life is good here too.
No traffic in that area, of course. You can just get in and out of the campus. I'm going to ask that as my first question because as somebody who just, I moved to St. Charles, Missouri last year, and the previous to that spent 4 years in Chino Hills, California, which about 45 minutes away from LAX if you hit no traffic. But I had to go to LAX a lot because I travel a lot. And, you know, if you have commuter students in the Southern California area, the number one thing that people talk about in California is traffic. You know, if you've ever seen Saturday Night Live, they even did a skit called The Californians about it, where you take the 10 and get on the 40, and you know, it is truly like that. How do you deal with the in and out of commuter students? Because traffic is a real thing.
Yes. So one of the things we are sitting on, and I suspect this will come out later too, is the preferences of students. So, you know, some thought that everything will go online. Some thought nothing will ever go online. And we're finding that there is a sweet spot in there somewhere where you have a hybrid format when students come to campus maybe once a week or once a month for intensive sessions, and the rest you manage virtually. But one of the keys to our success over the years was being able to pick locations that are central enough so nobody has to travel more than 20, 30 minutes and be able to accommodate them. But traffic is real. I live 8 miles away from the campus, and that takes me 45 minutes if I don't plan my time well.
Holy crap!
That's that's a long way. 8 miles could be 80 minutes, depending on where you live in Southern Cal. Talk about students right now a little bit. You know, graduate programs across the country are experiencing some enrollment decline. Not as stark as undergraduate programs where we saw the 10% reductions, but grad programs 2%, 3%. Some are climbing back out of that, but some are still experiencing the decline. Because of the value conversation, maybe higher ed doesn't have value or you don't need a degree anymore. Are students still seeking the master's, the doctoral degrees like they were before, or is there more of a convincing process taking place these days?
There is, the convincing process is alive, but it seldom makes it to the application process. So students usually do a good job of convincing themselves whether they want to apply or they don't want to apply. Once they apply, the convincing process becomes, why are we the best fit for you? Or equally, why are you the best fit for us? But that pre-convincing decision is, in my opinion, is what's altering the trajectory of enrollment across the various universities. Students have to decide, do I want to go back?
Why do you think they're deciding not to go back now when they would have come back to school? What's dissuading them?
Well, we know historically, research shows that there is a reverse correlation between employment and education. When unemployment is high, people are not working, they're a lot more likely to go back and get other degrees. When they are working, when they find a job, they don't go back to work as much. This is held true numerous ups and downs in the economic cycle. Now, along with that comes the value calculation. Now, I have an economics background, so I somewhat believe in the rational person theory. And so people make rational decisions. You figure, all right, if I go get this degree, both in tangible and intangible benefits over the next 5 years, I'll get X many dollars of benefits. People call me doctor. That may be, appealing to some, or this allows me to get more promotions, better opportunities, etc. And they compare that to what it costs to do the program. That cost benefit analysis right now tilts on the side of don't go to pursue higher education. Another piece, and tell me if I'm long-winded, that I come from the rank of faculty where they wind us up for 4-hour lectures. So let me know if I'm running long-winded. The second piece to this is there is a real supply and demand issue. See, if everybody has a bachelor's degree, then a bachelor's degree has no more value as something that differentiates you from somebody else. Then everybody needs a master's degree to differentiate themselves. And if that happens, then the master's degrees, what's the difference between having one or not having one when everybody else has one? These become minimum requirements. So there is some saturation of degrees. And the last piece is some majors just have a better rate of return on investment than others. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing a lot of folks who went into areas of study that doesn't have that high rate of return now are stepping back, and those fields are suffering a little bit.
Elliot, I want to bring you in, but I just want to let you know that I downloaded this sound for you. I wasn't going to play it, but you're here.
From now on, you will speak only when spoken to.
But,
that seems to be the story of my life. As Cat Stevens once said, from the moment I can talk, I was ordered to listen. So in his song Father and Son. But I have a real interesting question for you in that, especially since you're dealing with, the postgraduate degrees and adult students, how important is a flexible learning environment for your university and for your students? And how has that changed over the last couple of years or evolved? And what do you see going forward you doing to that type of the curriculum?
It's not just important, it's life and death. Students now have infinite supply of universities and programs to go to. And one of the mistakes they make is that where you get your degree is equally as valuable of having that degree, especially once you get past the bachelor's degree, your doctorate, your master's degree. So there are so many different places available to pursue a doctorate. We offer a PhD in global leadership. There are a number of other PhD programs similar to it. Some come at a fraction of our cost. Some come fully online. Some come with different features, etc. And if the students are making decisions not based on, I want to attend Pepperdine, but how does this fit in my life? Now, and then there is, I don't want to call it misinformation, and it's not misinformation, but it's information that's not precise, perhaps. So getting a degree from University of X, getting a doctorate degree from University of X isn't equal to getting a doctoral degree from another school that's more prestigious. So some students are making a convenient decision. This fits my life, which is crucial. And then get a degree and then apply for a teaching position with a doctorate, and their CV doesn't even make it past the mailroom.
And I just want to follow up with that. We recently published an article where a lot of students, when they're making their final decision, it actually, a lot of times they said it came down to the way the university communicated back with them and how easy the communication was and how welcome they felt. How have you concentrated your outreach or recruitment efforts to make sure that potential, recruits want to choose Pepperdine?
So we are a faith-based university. So in our value system, every person is created uniquely in infinite images of a God we worship and we praise. We have that level of obligation to everyone. And this precedes the I want to see the management syndrome issues that now we are dealing with. So that has always been our obligation. Now, what you concede in this process has become an issue. So everybody competes to provide good service. You're absolutely right. If somebody is not happy with something and an enrollment officer said, they will immediately call the manager. I jokingly say, my job resembles a lot more the manager at Denny's than a dean at the largest graduate school of psychology in the world. Yeah, so that's absolutely important. But the other side to that, and I know you didn't ask it, the other side to that is a lot of schools are conceding a lot to get that information. Pandering almost.
I can see that.
If you go back in time a little bit, Farzin, you to the 80s, early 80s, mid 90s, you're a program development manager for the city of Los Angeles, so public policy and social change and those types of areas. You started teaching in the mid 90s, and looks like you started a business. You're an organizational consultant for other businesses. And then you get into higher ed. What about higher ed? What does higher ed need to do to stay relevant? Because you come from a background of business and policy outside of higher ed. When you got into higher ed, were you looking around going, what the heck? Or, you know, this makes sense? Or, boy, it doesn't move very fast, or it moves very fast. Tell us about some of your perceptions of higher ed as you've moved through administration now. And a lot of questions. I just have a lot of questions for you. Tell me what higher ed needs to do.
So if you have that sound effect that says bullseye, on my behalf, play that for you. Because
you would play that for me?
No. On my behalf. There you go. I really love the question. It's a question of relevance. The biggest challenge we face in real life is remaining relevant. I am old enough to have driven to Blockbuster Video to go up and down the aisles to find that DVD for home entertainment. Now I have, you know,
that would have been a VHS.
VHS.
Oh, VHS too. Yes, Betamax. You want to go?
Or I'm older than you.
to just drive this point home, there's actually a meme on social media, and it says, and it's a guy, and he's going up and he's grabbing the VHS off of the Blockbuster, and there's no tape behind, there's no VHS, and he said, if you don't know what this feeling is, you don't really know what it was like to go to a video store.
It's an empty box.
Yes, and you know,
we made you lose this.
Sorry,
I was going to ask you if we made you lose your train of thought there.
Oh no, that's good. I do it on my own plenty well, so don't feel bad.
Nailed it.
So Blockbuster became irrelevant. You know, just imagine what 30, 40 years ago, a bunch of people in Switzerland were looking at watches, and, you know, they were making the best watches in the world. And a team from Japan goes over there and says, you know, there's this new stone that you can put in a watch. It's much stronger, keeps much better time, far less effective, called quartz. And they laughed them off. And now every watch is quartz. Stories like that are immense. Like, I'm old enough to remember MySpace before there was FaceTime, before there was Instagram, before there was something else. So as quickly as you become prominent in some field, equally as quickly you become irrelevant. Not obsolete, but irrelevant. So one of the challenges for us is, how do we maintain an education system that doesn't allow people to become irrelevant very quickly? How quickly did Starbucks hasn't become quite irrelevant. They have a lot of competition, but Blockbuster Video became very quickly irrelevant. Netflix bought them up, and, you know, like the story has that Netflix goes, the founders of Netflix go to Blockbuster and go, now we have technology, we can put all your DVDs on a server, people can download it, and for $50,000 we'll sell it to you. And they laughed them off, and then they offered the entire chain 10 years later to Netflix for you know, pennies at the time, and they wouldn't take it. So that issue of relevance is really critical.
Mm-hmm. With that being said, Joe, if you don't mind me jumping in, how important has the investment in technology been at your university to stay relevant? And again, let's not talk about just staying relevant, but, you know, planning for the future and what you're looking at to obviously embrace going forward.
Excellent question. So I remember when the COVID pandemic hit, March 2020, I had a group of doctoral students flying to Los Angeles for a 4-day intensive. And they were literally at the airport, and we were calling them and saying, stay home. We don't know what we are going to do, but we'll figure something out so your education doesn't get disrupted. And everybody said, and everybody jumped on, and then they bought all these cameras and microphones, and they anticipated that the pendulum now will swing fully to online. I read a lot, and I used to read all these predictions that universities won't need retail space, office space. Universities, you know, leasing of commercial buildings will go away. There will be a disaster. What people don't consider often is when a pendulum swings, it almost never swings back to where it was. It always lands at a new equilibrium, because the reason it swung is the external forces have changed. Those external forces never go back to where they were. They just create a new equilibrium. So we're still looking for that new equilibrium. It's pretty safe to say so far, and I'm guilty of what I'm accusing everybody else. Like, we see 3 cars ahead of us on the road, and we think this is the trajectory of the road for the next 100 miles. It's not. It's just the immediate future. There was some push to create simultaneous attendance. That is at 4:30, if your class started at 4:30 in the evening, as is the case for us, at 4:15, you would decide if you're gonna drive home and jump on Zoom and be virtually in the classroom, or drive to the campus and be physically in the classroom. There are a lot of challenges with that. The notion of fully online appeals to about 1/3, about 34, 35% of students based on our own internal studies. And it's completely unappealing to another 40%. So if we go with that 40% really like the college experience, being on campus, and they can't, there's a middle 30%, 25% that are, like hybrid and the rest. So we have to figure out where do we position ourselves and build our repertoire around that. What is the sweet spot is really the question. And so far what we're seeing is the hybrid format, not the simultaneous attendance. Every one of these requires a different degree of commitment to technology. So one of the decisions we made early on that for us, it's learning theory, pedagogy, as opposed to technology. So we decided that for us, the number one thing was student engagement. Our students, they're not going to sit there and listen to the sage on the stage and marvel him in here. They want to be engaged. They want to be. So for us, the challenge is how do we create engagement in a flexible arena where the cost of technology is low enough where something shifts tomorrow, I can shift with it. So it's very difficult for the bureaucracy of higher education to adopt a nimble mindset.
Absolutely.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Absolutely.
Attention.
Are you ready to elevate your institution's marketing and enrollment strategies? Join the EdUp Experience podcast at the Insights EDU conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't miss out on this opportunity to hear from engaging speakers from industry-leading companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and higher ed leaders. Learn the latest marketing and enrollment strategies to grow your programs. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration.
Attention. Oh, yeah.
Join the movement to mobilize and revolutionize higher education by picking up your copy of Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education today. This book has been featured in Forbes, NPR, Harvard Business Review, CEO World Magazine, NBC News, CBS News, and Business Insider, among many others. Don't miss out on what today's highest college leaders have to say about the future of higher education. Pick up your copy on Amazon.
And just as a follow-up real quick, how did your faculty respond to those types of challenges? Because they were used to being subject matter experts and responsible for obviously for their lectures, but now they have to be technologists, they have to be social media experts, and it's all about student engagement, but now they have to wear these other hats. And some of them handled it a lot better than others. How did you bring your faculty along to embrace this blended approach?
So immediately, the first thing that comes to mind is the conversation about relevance. There's a professor here at the business school who inspired me to leave a very lucrative business lifestyle and go into the modesty of an academic life. That person's magic is in his lectures, is his presence. So somebody like that goes from top of the student ratings to now all of a sudden, well, that doesn't work online.
Right.
Like when you're in class, if you're engaged with students, it's like being on a poker table. You're reading expression, you're reading the so-called tells, you're responding live on Zoom as the primary medium. You don't have that luxury. So there were some that were left behind. There were some, they had a couple of faculty, and mind you, Pepperdine's Graduate School of Education and Psychology, pretty far along in the online learning space. We have had online programs, partially online programs for over 30 years, long before.
Amazing.
Well, we were blessed with some visionary leaders in the past. So, but we still had one faculty member who came in and said, I know it's COVID, but I don't have internet at home. What do you mean? Well, I have a cell phone. That's good enough, but I can't do classes. So how do I get internet? And then you get internet is how do I turn it on? How do I turn it on? How do I log in, et cetera, et cetera. Once you get past the first level of preparation, the minimum requirement is kind of like once you get your driver's permit, now you get in the car, now you got to learn to drive. Then you learn to drive. Now you got to be really, really good at it for the freeway. That really, really good at it for the freeway is, you have the basic skills of technology, you have a good commitment to teaching, you have your material. Now it's delivery. How do I recreate the magic in the classroom online?
Right.
So for us, it was literally going stage by stage. We did a really good job. We were far from perfect. And it continues.
It'll continue to be a challenge, and as technology continues to advance, and the one thing, and I know Joe agrees with this, is the student. You really got to look at the student as almost the customer, and how and when they want to receive information. It could be different than someone else, and and lecturers and professors have had to adapt to continue that student engagement, but across different mediums.
How do you?
Please go ahead. Well, you absolutely do, but there is a balance. It's almost like when two people into a relationship, one person cuts down 30% of their needs and desires. The other person cuts off 30%, and they put it together, and collectively they get 140% more than each person could have individually got it. So this relationship with this highly demanding students that want, a Bloomingdale customer service is balanced with, you also have to meet standards. That's our job. Right. So developing that partnership, developing that mindset and expectation early on is really critical. And, some are better at it, and some fully cater to students in order to get them away from someone else. And then the student walks into an arena that they didn't think they will get.
Let's go back just a bit to you said the bureaucracy that's involved in higher ed. It is a highly bureaucratic industry. We as a dean, I'm sure you know better than most, there are lots of committees. Things can get stuck in committees. Things don't move as fast as the business world might move things along. How do you balance relevance against that bureaucracy when the foundation of higher education, the way we're designed in many ways, is to prevent speed, not prevent speed, but it's against fast moving decision making with, we have to stay relevant. We have to do this right now. I know in my environment and the environments I've worked in, it's like, we have to do this right now, but wait a minute. We have to socialize this. We got to get feedback. We got to get all these things. It's like, by the time we get it over to where we need it, we're not going to need it anymore because they're going to go somewhere else to get it. How do you balance those two things?
We always look at, we're very entrepreneurial. George Pepperdine, the founder of our university, was an entrepreneur who sold auto parts through postcards and mail order long before there was such thing. So we have that spirit. So we're always looking at what are some new offerings we can be early to market in and make that our thing for a while. So as soon as we find something, we look at the accreditation process, and I can be nimble at my end, and I can develop a curriculum, get it approved through all the committees in 6, 7, 8 months, which is like light speed, for us. But then there is a 3.5 to 4 years accreditation process to offer your first class. Who knows what's needed in 4 years? You buy an electrical car and they guarantee their batteries for 5 years. And then they say, well, we don't know what battery life is going to look like in 5 years.
Yikes!
So there is internal bureaucracy, and then there is external bureaucracy. And one of the things that has really helped us is we have figured out how to be curriculum nimble. So, if you go to one of our programs, there are 12 units of coursework that's also the same coursework in another program, and it's also the same coursework to another program. And then there is another 8 units that applies here and there, and you can rebundle these into new programs. That allows us to get our own internal bureaucracy done in pretty quick order. And then we are at the mercy of dealing with accreditation. And there's strategies there too, but you have to be almost like a surgeon, curriculum surgeon, to figure out how to navigate these paths. And nobody teaches you this. You just learn the hard way.
I like your style, dude.
Elliot.
Funny. Let me ask you a question. Being a faith-based university through these last couple of years, do you think that has played to Pepperdine's and advantage in terms of maybe cutting through some of that bureaucracy, getting people on the same page, having the students' cooperation and the faculty cooperation a little bit more, because there's a little bit more of a like mindset than maybe a public university?
Excellent question. Very thought-provoking for me. So we talk about uncivil discourse in the public arena. Like there's nothing you can watch on television other than, TV shows and stuff where two sides don't yell at each other. And that lack of civility starts in higher education. So even though we're very strong in our commitment to faith, we don't evangelize. You're more than welcome to, our table is open to you. You're every bit as valuable as anybody else, but there's no mandatory requirement to do anything that you're not comfortable with. So we are less susceptible to that. But no, unfortunately, whatever ideology you have, whether it's left, middle, right, no ideology, etc., you're not immune to the discourse, to the divisive discourse that's out there.
We choose truth over facts.
He got to use
that to add on to that question, being a faith-based institution at times puts people into a common vision, in that we want to develop the whole person. A lot of times you hear something like that or something similar from a faith-based institution where it's not just about education, it's about education, it's about faith, it's about workforce, it's about all of these things. How central is is their faith-based curriculum central across degrees? Is it the institutional vision that is faith-based, but the degrees are all tactical, more tactical? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, and thank you for asking that. I come from a culture of metaphors. I'm going to take a shot at one. Hopefully it won't lose in translation. Like, I don't know if either of you are in a committed relationship, but let's say you're married. When you go home at night and you're married, or any committed relationship, do you do a specific section of the time as married, or is that the context? I'm guessing that's the context. Like, I've been married forever, and Betty and I don't have Saturday morning 4 to 6 for being married. We are married.
Yes.
It shows in our commitments. We don't have to try to be married when you're committed to that. Everything you do is consistent with that. So our journey of faith, our commitment to our faith is the context, is the backdrop. We do have convocation for students to attend. There are opportunities to attend church services on campus. And there is no avoidance of any conversation about faith on any policy issue in any classroom, but it's also not mandatory or required. There is a hymn we sing at the church that I attend that says, we are Christians by our deeds, not by how we beat the Bible.
But I think that's very key in one of your opening statements, where you first said at the beginning of this podcast that you look at every student as an individual, and therefore no student should be left behind, and each one of their individual needs need to be met. Along the lines of Joe's question, that really does come from a group mentality at the university.
So let me push back on that. How about not a group mentality, in this sense that we recognize and honor you as a distinct individual created in infinite images of God. God is diverse. God, but you're distinct. You are not member of a group. So, I'm Farzin. I'm not an Iranian American.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, maybe I should clarify. My point was that the leaders in your university have the same mindset that each student is an individual.
Yes.
That's where I was going with that.
No problem. No, I understand now. So in my jargon, we call that, we do have that shared vision. We do have that clear understanding. Yeah, we have many, I'm sure you've seen as many vision statements as anybody else. And nobody knows what they are because they're like 50 pages long and nobody pays attention to it. So for us, you talk to anybody around Pepperdine and administration and stuff, you hear 3 words: purpose, service, leadership. and that serves as our over the years de facto guiding principle, prime directive, if you're a Star Trek fan. And that's what's, while we are true to that, we really do well.
My big takeaway from this part of the conversation is I feel like if I go to my wife and say, could we just be married from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then you allow me to play video games the rest of the day, and I'm going to cite Dr. Farzin Madjidi that gave me that advice, I'm not sure if I'd get away with it.
I don't think so.
But I might try anyway because I really enjoy video games. I enjoy my wife too. Antonella, if you're listening to this, I love you very much. But I do like video games, just for the record.
I really don't think that's what he was really saying.
Oh, okay. I must have misheard him. Misheard him.
I will give you something to go home and get in trouble for. I believe that nothing ruins relationships like spending quality time together. So there is.
Oh, I love it.
My point with that is when you identify and distinguish only a portion of your time as quality time, by implication, the rest of it is not quality time.
That's right.
You're playing video games is part of the context of marriage.
That's right. I'm going to tell my wife that for sure.
70%, and she brings her particular 70%. You each make some compromise, not sacrifice.
That's right.
It makes life better.
It's the message that, and it's a good message for higher education. We don't do higher education some of the time. We do higher education all the time. And if we're gonna bring back the Farzin, I worry that I don't want to close out the episode because I want to be sensitive to your time, but I worry that we haven't in higher ed, and I talk about this a lot in the podcast, we haven't packaged the importance of higher ed in the right way as the public has, and others, articles, news have said higher education's not worth it. You could do this and you don't need a degree. Higher ed's too expensive. It's not relevant anymore. Now, if you work inside higher ed, you could look at that and go, but yes, it is still relevant. And yes, there are ways to afford it. And yes, it is still valuable. But we don't do enough packaging of those things externally to fight against that public perception, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
This is not an inappropriate joke, but it's a joke I'll probably regret saying. So the joke is that engineering students, when they graduate, they say, how do we do this? Science students, when they graduate, they would say, why do we do this? Social science students, when they graduate, they ask, would you like fries with this?
Yikes!
It's a real life, and I'm not making fun of a field that I've dedicated my life to, but that relevance is extremely important.
Yep.
You may have, if you go to India, if you go to Iran, a part of the world that I know, your Uber driver has a PhD because it's a lot more financially beneficial to them to drive Uber than to work in an overcrowded, underdeveloped field. So we read the link between the future earning of a degree cannot be separated from the tuition you pay. And the Department of Education is starting looking at that. They're looking at like psychology programs, and they're saying, if the future earning is $80,000 a year, your degree shouldn't be $120,000. They're starting to look at that. But it's not how much you pay for something, it's what do you get. If they sell you a Rolls Royce for $100,000 brand new, you'll do anything you can to get it. So we got to make sure that the link between the future earnings that the degree provides is not lost with what we spent. So we don't educate folks in and make them really intelligent in areas that they can't make a living off of, and then sour them to higher education.
Well, I can tell you just real quick a story that, and this is what I relate down to my children is, I really don't care what they do for a living as long as they do it well. Whether they go into trades, like my daughter has 2 master's degrees, my son's working on an architecture degree, my 3rd child is looking to go into welding. But the stories I tell them is to at least get your education, and they'll be like, well, if I'm going into even a trade, why would I get my education? And I use this example real quick. 2 of my best friends went into the New York City Police Department. One went straight out of high school. One got his degree from Queens College, got a 4-year degree. When you went in out of high school at this time in New York City, at that point, you couldn't get past the sergeant, right? And he didn't make sergeant, and he ended up retiring with a little bit of a pension. The friend of mine who got a degree in accounting, mind you, 4 years, was able to make it up to captain only because of his degree, and his pension is more than triple. And they retired both the same year, and he makes more than triple in his pension because he was able to excel based on the merit, based on his degree. And that serves you well, whether you serve in the public sector or the private sector. Whether or not you're pursuing the career and the degree in which you obtained, the value of the degree is there. And companies, and especially in the public sector, recognize that.
Amazing.
You know, I like to add something to that in agreement with you. There is a perception now that I don't need a degree. I just need this MicroMasters, you know, these 4 certificate courses or these stackables. That's all true. They prepare you for the challenges you face in the next few years.
That's right.
They give you, in essence, a short-term can of fish that doesn't go sour immediately. But it doesn't prepare you for the issue of relevance. The relevance that I mentioned, which is the greatest challenge we face, the kind of learning that we need is learn how to learn. I had no idea what diabetes was. I thought it was you ate too much candy, I don't eat candy. I was diagnosed with type 2. I had 2 to 3 months to learn everything I need to know, learn to be part of the conversation with the physicians. You know, and I know that we won't have time, but like that's one of the things I worry about ChatGPT, because every other technology tool we have ever had has supplemented our intelligence, has helped us along, it made us more productive. ChatGPT or AI in general is replacing mediocre intelligence with mediocre artificial intelligence. But what we need to be able to move fast, to take what we know to something else, learn fast, be that agile and flexible, because life changes and it doesn't ask for your input.
Well, Elliot got all his questions today from ChatGPT. That's why they're all mediocre.
I'm actually not even here. This is a robot speaking right now.
An AI. I do like to make fun of you a little bit, Elliot, but that's why we make a good.
It's all right.
Good
It's
pair
part of
here.
the gig.
Farzin, anything else? I'd like to close every episode the same 2 questions. Is there anything else that you want to say about Pepperdine University and the Graduate School of Education and Psychology? Anything coming up, programs you're launching, anything that you just want the audience to know?
You know, I am not just the dean of the university, I am also a graduate. If you remember the hair club commercial, you probably giggled. But one of the things that's really important to us is to be high tech and to be high touch at the same time. Not to sacrifice quality for convenience.
Excellent.
Not to sacrifice not to sacrifice rigor to get bigger numbers. And that's what has always distinguished us. You know, we are a teaching university. We are top 50 in the United States. And if you're top 50, the census has 50 independent countries under one constitution. So if you're top 50, you're among one of the best in the world. And we do it by balancing both. And I hope that, and then this is not just a commercial, this is my conviction, that a lot of people sacrifice convenience or rigor for convenience, and then they get a degree that's not valued, recognized, and you ain't gonna go back and get another master's degree to fix that, or another doctoral degree. So what we do is high touch, high tech, excellence and convenience, rigor and quality and access. So, you know, people shouldn't settle for less.
I love that. What do you see for the future of higher education? Your final question.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really growing in the field is partnering with OPMs, outside program managers, where they partner with you, they take your program fully online and you split revenues in some form or shape. And, you know, that was a boom industry. Now it's really leveling up. So a lot of people like me, the decisions they're going to face is very similar to onset of software in industry. Do you make your own or do you buy the software? Do you partner with an outside agency to develop your curriculum and take it fully online, or do you develop that in-house? That's going to be one of the key decisions people have to make. And unfortunately, a lot of what I see out there is just mediocre. It's converting what you did in class to online, and that conversion isn't one-to-one.
That is such a good point, and it doesn't come up that much. But that is the how you want to get to where you're going to go is a critical question that all of us have to answer in higher ed. And as you bring on the right partners, make sure they're the right partners to help you achieve what you want to achieve, because it is very hard sometimes to get out of these relationships that are multi-year. Because if you decide you're going to outsource and then you decide to build it in, and you may not have the opportunity because you end up in a long-term contract. Somebody that is going to be long-term for me is my friend today, my guest co-host today. He is the one and only Elliot Markowitz, head of content and editor-in-chief at Fierce Education. Elliot, what do you think of this conversation today?
Always a pleasure. Very enlightening. I love the humbleness of, Dr. Madjidi, and, the strategy behind, how they're embracing the technology and the changes and the focus on the student engagement. Really enlightening.
Well, I enjoyed it myself too, and I'm going to give him the outro that he deserves. Ladies and gentlemen, he's my guest today. He is your guest today. He's Dr. Farzin Madjidi. He is the Dean of the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at an incredible university called Pepperdine. Farzin, how did you enjoy your time on the podcast today?
I loved it. Thank you. Thank you for making me comfortable and at ease. And thank you for the great questions. It really made me think about some things that I need to pay more attention to.
Well, I'm sure my questions helped you do that. Elliot's, I'm not so sure. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just ed-upped.
Oh, yeah.
Attention, higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. We are taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us at Insights EDU on February 20th to 22nd, 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. Gain insight into the latest higher education trends and cutting-edge marketing strategies that'll take your institution's enrollment to a whole new level. This is your opportunity to connect with higher education leaders and marketing experts from across the country. Comprehensive presentations, engaging panel discussions, and more. Insights EDU will equip you to position your institution for growth. Register now at insightsedu.com and use the code EDUP to save $50 off your registration. Can you afford to miss this conference?
I don't think so.
Attention.
Forbes called commencement the beginning of a new era in higher education, a dispensable touch point for what's being said in, about, and around higher education now. Don't miss the insights from 125 college and university presidents about what the future of higher education holds. Pick up your copy of Commencement on Amazon today.